The Galactic Council, once thought unassailable in its power, now found itself beset on all sides, its influence crumbling away like sand before the tide. And as the flames of rebellion spread across the stars, the humans of Earth knew that their fight was far from over. For they had struck a blow against the Council, had shown the galaxy the true strength of the human spirit. But the war for their freedom, for the freedom of all those who suffered under the Council's rule, had only just begun. And in the halls of power on Earth, a grim determination took hold. No matter the cost, no matter the sacrifice, humanity would see this fight through to the end. They would break the Council's grip on the galaxy, would forge a new path for all the races of the cosmos. For in defying the Council, in standing against tyranny and oppression, they had set in motion a chain of events that would change the face of the galaxy forever. And nothing, not the Council's armies, not its fleets, not all the power and wealth of its vast empire, could stop the tide of change that was to come. The battle for Earth was over. But the war for the soul of the galaxy had only just begun. Humanity brings the fight to the oppressors. In the wake of the stunning revelations of the Galactic Council's true motives, the leaders of Earth found themselves faced with a momentous decision. The Council had been exposed as a ruthless, tyrannical regime, one that sought to conquer and exploit the races of the galaxy for its own gain. And now, with rebellion spreading like wildfire across the stars, the question remained, what was Earth's role to be in the coming conflict? There were those who urged caution, who argued that Earth had already done its part in defeating the Council's invasion. They had sent a message, had shown the galaxy that humanity would not be cowed or conquered. Was it not enough, they asked, to have defended their own freedom? Must they now take on the burden of liberating others as well? But there were others, led by the indomitable Admiral Vera Ivanova, who saw things differently. To them, Earth's victory over the Council was not the end of the fight, but the beginning. They had been given a chance, a rare opportunity to strike a blow against tyranny and oppression on a galactic scale, and to turn away from that chance, to retreat into isolation, and leave the rest of the galaxy to fend for itself. That was not the human way. In the end, it was Ivanova's vision that won out. Earth would not stand idly by while others suffered under the Council's yoke. They would take the fight to the heart of the enemy, would use their newfound technological might to shatter the Council's power once and for all. And so, in secret shipyards and research facilities across the planet, a new fleet began to take shape. Drawing on the captured technology from the Council's failed invasion, Earth's scientists and engineers worked tirelessly to create a new generation of ships and weapons, ones that would surpass anything the galaxy had ever seen. At the heart of this new armada was a revolutionary new propulsion system, a warp drive that allowed human ships to cross vast distances in the blink of an eye. With this technology, Earth's fleets could strike at the Council's strongholds with impunity, could bring the fight to the very doorstep of the enemy. As the new ships began to roll off the production lines, Admiral Ivanova gathered her forces for a bold new offensive. Their target, the Council's key shipyards and industrial worlds, the backbone of its military might. In a series of lightning raids, human fleets struck deep into Council territory, catching the enemy off guard and sowing chaos and confusion in their wake. Mighty Council warships, once thought invincible, fell before the onslaught of human weapons, while the subjugated races of the galaxy looked on in stunned disbelief. On a dozen worlds, human marines stormed Council installations and weapons factories, sabotaging production and freeing the slaves who toiled there. And with each victory, with each blow struck against the Council's power, more and more of the galaxy's oppressed flocked to Earth's banner. Among the stars, a new power was rising, a coalition of free worlds united under the leadership of Earth. And as the Council's grip on the galaxy began to crumble, as its fleets and armies fell back in disarray, it seemed as though a new era was dawning, one in which the races of the cosmos would at last be free to chart their own destiny. But even as the tide of battle turned in humanity's favor, Admiral Ivanova knew that the fight was far from over. The Council's rulers, desperate to hold onto their power, were marshaling every resource at their disposal for a final, apocalyptic showdown. Zorlax leaned forward, relishing the opportunity to put this impudent creature in her place. "Admiral Ivanova," he began, his tone dripping with condescension, "the Galactic Council has deemed humanity's conduct unacceptable. Your reckless expansion, your refusal to share technology, and your blatant disregard for our treaties cannot be tolerated. We are here to assume control of your system and bring you into compliance with Council law." To his surprise, Ivanova did not cower or plead as he had expected. Instead, a small, knowing smile played across her lips. "I'm afraid we must decline your generous offer, Supreme Commander," she replied coolly. "Earth and her colonies are not subject to the whims of your council. We are a free and independent people, and we intend to remain so." Zorlax surged to his feet, his face contorting with rage. "You dare defy us?" he roared, slamming his fist down on the arm of his throne. "You primitives have no idea of the power you are trifling with. Comply now or face the consequences." Ivanova's smile only widened. "Oh, I think it is you who fail to grasp the situation, Commander," she said softly. "We are not the primitives you take us for. In fact, I believe it's time for a little demonstration." With a nod to someone off-screen, the Admiral's image winked out, replaced by a view of Earth's orbital space. Zorlax watched in confusion as the handful of human defense platforms began to shift and unfold, revealing themselves to be far more extensive than they had appeared. Massive cannons emerged from hidden bays, swiveling to target the Council fleet, while swarms of sleek, deadly fighters poured forth from camouflaged hangars. "Impossible," Zorlax breathed, his eyes widening in disbelief. "Our scans showed no trace of these defenses." As if in answer, a new wave of contacts appeared on the fleet's sensors. Dozens of human warships, each one bristling with advanced weapons and shielding that far surpassed anything the Council had expected. They had been hiding in the shadow of Earth's moon, masked from detection until this moment. Admiral Ivanova's face reappeared on the view screen, her expression now one of grim determination. "As you can see, Supreme Commander, we are far from defenseless. For decades, we have been preparing for the possibility of invasion. Studying every scrap of technology, we could glean from your Council's arrogant displays of power. You thought us primitive, but in reality, we have surpassed you in ways you can scarcely imagine." She leaned forward, her eyes boring into Zorlax. "This is your one and only warning. Withdraw from our space immediately, or suffer the consequences. Earth will not be subjugated. Not now, not ever." With that, the communication cut off, leaving Zorlax to stare in horrified silence at the assembled might of humanity arrayed before him. In his arrogance, he had led his fleet into a trap, underestimating the very species he had come to conquer. And now, with Earth's hidden defenses revealed and their technology far beyond what he had believed possible, he faced a choice: retreat in humiliation or press the attack and risk utter annihilation. The decision weighed heavily upon him as he sank back into his throne, the magnitude of his miscalculation crashing down like a physical weight. The Council had made a grave error in judgment, and now, it seemed, they would pay the price for their hubris. The question was, just how steep would that price be? As alarm klaxons began to blare throughout the fleet, Zorlax feared he would soon find out. The tide turns as humans go on the offensive. Supreme Commander Zorlax gripped the arms of his command throne tightly, his knuckles turning pale as he surveyed the tactical display with growing dread. The human defenses were like nothing he had ever seen, their ships and weapons technology far beyond what the Council had believed them capable of. And now, those same ships were moving to engage his fleet, their formations fluid and precise, leaving no doubt as to their hostile intentions. "All ships, assume battle formations," Zorlax barked, trying to keep the fear from his voice. "Prepare to engage the enemy." But even as his orders were relayed throughout the fleet, the humans struck with a speed and ferocity that left him reeling. Brilliant beams of energy lanced out from Earth's orbital platforms, slicing through the Council ship's shields as if they were paper. The sleek human fighters darted among the lumbering Council vessels like piranhas, their weapons finding weaknesses in armor and systems with uncanny precision. On the bridge of the EDF Titan, Admiral Vera Ivanova watched the battle unfold with a grim sense of satisfaction. She had hoped it would not come to this, that the Council would see reason and withdraw peacefully. But in her heart, she had known it was a futile hope. The Council's arrogance and lust for power would never allow them to back down, not when they believed victory was assured. "Admiral, the Council fleet is attempting to regroup and counterattack," her tactical officer reported, his fingers flying over his console as he tracked the chaotic swirl of ships and weapons fire. Ivanova nodded, her eyes never leaving the tactical display. "They're trying to buy time to bring their heavier ships to bear," she mused. "But we can't give them that chance. Order all ships to press the attack. We need to keep them off balance and disorganized." As the human fleet surged forward, their weapons cutting swaths of destruction through the Council ranks, Zorlax could only watch in helpless rage as his ships fell one by one. The human weapons were impossibly effective, bypassing shields and armor that had been thought impenetrable, while their own shots seemed to splash harmlessly against the human defenses. "Supreme Commander, we're losing ships faster than we can track," his executive officer cried, panic creeping into his voice. "We can't hold out much longer at this rate." Zorlax slammed his fist down on the arm of his throne, his face contorted with fury. "We will not be defeated by these primitives," he snarled. "Concentrate all fire on their flagship. If we can take out their leader, the rest will crumble." But even as the Council ships poured fire into the EDF Titan, the mighty human battleship shrugged off the onslaught, its advanced shields absorbing the energy with barely a flicker. In response, the Titan's main cannon swiveled to face the Council flagship, a massive particle beam accelerator that dwarfed anything in the Council arsenal. "Target locked, Admiral," the weapons officer reported, a note of savage joy in his voice. Particle beam charged and ready. Ivanova's lips curled into a predatory smile. Fire. A blinding lance of white-hot energy erupted from the Titan's prow, crossing the vast distance between the two flagships in a heartbeat. It struck the Council vessel amidships, bypassing its shields as if they didn't exist and coring through multiple decks before erupting out the other side. Secondary explosions blossomed along the ship's length as critical systems overloaded and failed, leaving it drifting and helpless, its weapons falling silent. Zorlax could only stare in horror at the ruin of his once proud flagship, the magnitude of his defeat crashing down upon him like a physical weight. All around, his fleet was crumbling, the human ships tearing through their ranks with impunity, their formations shattering like glass under the onslaught. "Supreme Commander, we must withdraw," his executive officer pleaded, his face ashen with terror. "We cannot win this battle." For a long moment, Zorlax remained silent, his eyes fixed on the drifting wreckage of his flagship. Then, with a snarl of rage and despair, he gave the order he had never thought he would utter. "All ships, retreat. Get us out of here now." As the battered remnants of the Council fleet limped away from Earth, their once proud armada reduced to a handful of shattered, bleeding hulks, Admiral Ivanova allowed herself a moment of grim triumph. They had won the day, against all odds, and sent a message that would echo throughout the galaxy. Humanity would not be conquered. Not now, not ever. But even as the cheers of her crew washed over her, Ivanova knew that this was only the beginning. The Council would not take this defeat lightly, and they would return, with all the might of their vast empire at their backs. The war for Earth's freedom, for humanity's very survival, had only just begun. And as she stood on the bridge of her victorious flagship, watching the last of the Council ships disappear into the depths of space, Admiral Vera Ivanova made a silent vow. No matter what it took, no matter how long it took, humanity would fight on. They would never surrender, never yield, never stop fighting for their right to chart their own destiny among the stars. For in this moment of triumph, Earth had shown the galaxy the true strength of the human spirit, the strength to stand against impossible odds, to defy the very forces that sought to enslave them, and to emerge victorious, unbowed and unbroken. And that was a strength that the Galactic Council, in all its arrogance and power, had gravely underestimated. They would not make that mistake again. The Galactic Council reveals its ulterior motives. In the aftermath of the Council fleet's devastating defeat at the hands of Earth's defenders, an eerie silence settled over the shattered remnants of the once proud Armada as it limped its way back to Council space. On board the crippled flagship, Supreme Commander Zorlax sat slumped in his command throne, his eyes haunted by the magnitude of his failure. He had been so certain of victory, so confident in the superiority of Council technology and tactics. But the humans had proven him wrong in every conceivable way, their ships and weapons far beyond anything the Council had ever faced. And now, the unthinkable had happened. A primitive species, one the Council had deemed fit only for subjugation, had handed them a humiliating defeat. The sound of boots on the deck plating snapped Zorlax out of his dark reverie. He looked up to see a squad of hulking, armored figures striding onto the bridge, their weapons trained on him and his surviving crew. With a sinking feeling, he recognized the insignia on their armor, the emblem of the human Marines. Supreme Commander Zorlax, the lead Marine said, his voice distorted by his helmet speakers. You are hereby taken into custody by the authority of the Earth Defense Force. Your ship is now under our control. Zorlax opened his mouth to protest, but the words died on his lips as the Marines advanced, their weapons never wavering. He knew he had no choice but to surrender. His ship was a ruin, his crew battered and demoralized, and to resist would only bring more death and suffering. As he was led away in shackles, Zorlax couldn't help but marvel at the irony of his situation. He, the Supreme Commander of the Galactic Council's mighty Armada, was now a prisoner of the very species he had come to conquer. And yet, even in defeat, he found himself grudgingly admiring the humans' tenacity and skill. Hours later, in a stark, brightly lit interrogation room on board the EDF Titan, Zorlax found himself face to face with Admiral Vera Ivanova. The human leader regarded him with a cool, appraising gaze, her eyes hard and unyielding. Supreme Commander, she began, her voice even and controlled. I must admit, I'm curious. Why did the Council really send your fleet to invade Earth? Was it simply to put us in our place, to teach us the error of defying your authority? Zorlax remained silent, his eyes fixed on the table in front of him. But Ivanova pressed on, undeterred. I think there's more to it than that, she said softly. I think there's something you're not telling us, something that the Council wants from Earth, and I intend to find out what it is. At that, Zorlax's head snapped up, his eyes blazing with sudden anger. You think you're so clever, don't you? He snarled. You think you've figured it all out, but you have no idea what you're up against, what the Council is truly capable of. Ivanova leaned forward, her gaze intense. Then enlighten me, Supreme Commander. What is the Council's true agenda here? What do you want from us? For a long moment, Zorlax remained silent, his jaw clenched tight. Then, with a sigh of resignation, he began to speak. It's your technology, he said quietly. Your ships, your weapons, your defenses, they're all far beyond anything the Council has ever seen. We thought you were primitives, but you've been holding out on us, hiding your true capabilities. Ivanova nodded, unsurprised. And you want that technology for yourselves, she said. It wasn't a question. Zorlax let out a bark of bitter laughter. Of course we do, he spat. With your technology, the Council could dominate the galaxy completely, crush any species that dared to resist us. But there's more to it than that. He leaned forward, his eyes gleaming with a fanatic light. Your world, Earth, it's rich in a rare element, one that's essential to our most advanced technologies. We've been searching for a new source for decades, and when we discovered your system, You decided to take it by force. Ivanova finished, her voice cold. To conquer us and strip our world bare. Zorlax shrugged, a gesture of casual cruelty. Why not? He said, you're just primitives after all. What right do you have to stand in the way of the Council's destiny? Ivanova's eyes flashed with anger, but she kept her voice level as she replied. The right of every sentient species to determine their own fate, she said softly. The right to live free, to chart our own course among the stars. And that is a right we will fight for, no matter the cost. She stood, her gaze locked with Zorlax. You've underestimated us, Supreme Commander. You thought us weak, thought us easily conquered, but you were wrong. And now, the Council will pay the price for its arrogance. With that, she turned and strode from the room, leaving Zorlax to contemplate the magnitude of his failure and the terrible reckoning that was to come. As word of the Council's true motives spread throughout the subjugated races of the galaxy, long-simmering resentments began to boil over into open rebellion. On a dozen worlds, the Council's puppet regimes found themselves facing the wrath of their own people as the downtrodden and oppressed rose up to throw off the yoke of their oppressors. And at the center of it all was Earth, the small, unassuming world that had defied the Council and won. To the rebels and the resistance fighters, the humans became a symbol of hope, of the unbreakable spirit that could stand against even the mightiest of tyrannies and emerge victorious. The Galactic Council underestimates humanity. In the grand halls of the Galactic Council headquarters, representatives from a dozen powerful alien races gathered to discuss the fate of a small upstart species, humanity. The humans had only recently achieved faster-than-light travel and begun to explore the stars, but their rapid advancements and refusal to bend to the Council's will had already earned them a reputation as troublemakers. These humans are a threat to the stability of our galactic order, declared Supreme Councilor Zoltax, his scaled face twisting into a sneer. They expand without regard for our treaties, they refuse to share their technologies, and they have the audacity to claim entire star systems as their own. Murmurs of agreement echoed through the chamber. The assembled councilors, hailing from ancient civilizations that had long since subjugated the lesser races of the galaxy, were unaccustomed to such defiance from a fledgling species. Ambassador Thorn, the lone human representative, stood to address the council. Though physically unimposing compared to the towering, muscular forms of the alien leaders, he radiated a quiet confidence. With all due respect, councilors, Thorn began, his voice calm and measured. Humanity has no intention of threatening your order. We seek only to explore, to learn, and to forge our own path among the stars. We have no desire for conquest or domination. Zoltax leaned forward, his dark eyes glinting. And yet you refuse to submit to this council's authority. You think yourselves above our laws and treaties. Thorn met the Supreme Councilor's gaze unflinchingly. We believe in the right of all sentient beings to self-determination. We will not be subjugated or controlled by any outside force, no matter how powerful they may be. The chamber erupted into angry shouts and protestations. Zoltax raised a clawed hand for silence. You see, he said, his voice dripping with contempt, the humans will never conform to our ways. They are a cancer that must be excised before they spread their disorder throughout the galaxy. He turned to his fellow councilors. I propose that we send a fleet to occupy their home system and bring them to heel. We will show them the consequences of defying the Galactic Council. Despite Thorn's impassioned objections, the proposal was met with overwhelming approval. The human ambassador was dismissed, his warnings falling on deaf ears as the Council set in motion their plans to subjugate Earth. As Thorn returned to his ship, he couldn't shake the feeling that the Council had gravely underestimated humanity. They thought of humans as primitives, as upstarts to be crushed beneath the heel of their galactic order. But Thorn knew the truth. Humanity would not go quietly into the night. They would fight for their freedom, their way of life, with every ounce of their being. The stage was set for a confrontation that would shake the very foundations of the galaxy. The Galactic Council, secure in their power and arrogance, had no idea what they were about to unleash. For when pushed to the brink, humanity had a way of defying the odds and emerging stronger than ever before. The Council's fleet would soon learn this lesson the hard way, as they set a course for the Sol system and an unwitting rendezvous with destiny. In their hubris, they had sealed their own fate, for the humans would not be conquered, would not be broken. They would rise to meet this challenge as they had so many others, with ingenuity, courage, and an indomitable will that would shatter the Council's perception of them forever. Earth's hidden defenses revealed. As the Galactic Council's peacekeeping armada entered the Sol system, Supreme Commander Zorlax sat upon his command throne with an air of smug satisfaction. The journey from Council space had been long, but the anticipation of teaching the unruly humans a harsh lesson in subjugation made it all worthwhile. Status report, Zorlax barked, his eyes fixed on the viewscreen displaying Earth's blue-green form growing larger by the moment. All ships accounted for and in formation. Supreme Commander, his executive officer replied crisply. Long-range scans detect minimal defenses around the human homeworld. They appear to have only a handful of primitive orbital platforms and a small fleet of sublight ships. Zorlax allowed himself a predatory grin. Excellent. Open a channel to the human leadership. It's time we laid down the law. Moments later, the view screen shifted to display a human female in a crisp military uniform, her dark hair pulled back into a severe bun and her eyes hard as steel. I am Admiral Vera Ivanova of the Earth Defense Force, she declared, her voice ringing with authority. State your intentions, Galactic Council vessels. In the heart of the Council's territory, a vast armada was gathering. A fleet of warships so massive and powerful that it seemed to blot out the very stars themselves. This was the Council's last gamble, their final bid to crush the rebellion and restore their iron grip on the galaxy. And as Ivanova stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching the endless ranks of enemy ships spread out before her, she knew that the fate of the galaxy would be decided here, in this moment, on this field of battle. The Free Worlds Alliance, the name given to the coalition that had rallied around Earth's banner, had come so far, had achieved so much. But now, faced with the full might of the Council's forces, they would be put to the ultimate test. Could they stand against the fury of the enemy? Could they withstand the onslaught of the Council's most powerful weapons and ships? Or would they be swept away, their dreams of freedom and justice crushed beneath the heel of tyranny once more? As the first shots of the final battle began to echo across the void, Admiral Ivanova steeled herself for the fight to come. No matter what happened, no matter the cost in blood and treasure, humanity would give their all in this fight. They would stand, united and unyielding, against the forces of oppression and darkness. For in this moment, the fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. And Earth, the small, unassuming world that had defied the Council and sparked the flames of rebellion, would be the one to tip the scales, one way or the other. The battle for the future had begun. Part 6. The Council collapses as humans usher in a new era. The final battle was joined, the massed fleets of the Galactic Council and the Free Worlds Alliance clashing in a cataclysmic confrontation that lit the stars themselves ablaze. Across the galaxy, all eyes turned to this single decisive moment, the outcome of which would shape the course of history for generations to come. At the heart of the maelstrom, Admiral Vera Ivanova stood resolute on the bridge of her flagship, the EDF Titan, her gaze locked on the tactical displays that showed the ebb and flow of the battle. All around her, the ship shuddered and bucked as enemy fire hammered against its shields, the Council's warships pressing their attack with a desperate ferocity. But the humans and their allies met that ferocity with a determination and courage that knew no bounds. Ivanova's fleet, armed with the most advanced weapons and technology Earth had to offer, tore into the enemy ranks with a savage fury, the sleek human ships dancing through the void with impossible grace and precision. And yet, for all their valor and skill, the Free Worlds Alliance was vastly outnumbered, the Council's fleet seemingly endless in its size and power. One by one, human ships began to fall, destroyed or crippled by the relentless onslaught of the enemy. On the Council's flagship, the Supreme Overlord, the leader of the Galactic Council, watched the battle unfold with a sense of grim satisfaction. For all their defiance and bravado, the humans were still no match for the might of the Council. Soon, he knew, their resistance would be crushed, their worlds brought to heel once more. But even as the battle raged on, the Supreme Overlord's confidence began to waver. For all across the galaxy, the subjugated races of the Council were rising up in rebellion, inspired by the example of the humans and their allies. On 100 worlds, the Council's grip was slipping, its armies and fleets stretched thin as they struggled to contain the spreading revolt. And as reports of these uprisings began to filter in, the Supreme Overlord's subordinates began to argue and bicker among themselves, their once unshakable unity crumbling in the face of this unprecedented crisis. Some called for a full retreat, for the Council to abandon its conquests and focus on defending its core worlds. Others demanded that the Council press the attack, that they crush the rebellion no matter the cost. In the end, it was the Supreme Overlord himself who made the fateful decision. Driven by pride and arrogance, he ordered his fleet to stand their ground, to fight to the last ship and the last soldier. He would not be seen as weak, as a leader who had surrendered in the face of the enemy. And so the battle raged on, the Council's fleet throwing itself against the human defenses with reckless abandon. But for all their numbers and firepower, the Council's ships were no match for the skill and determination of the Free Worlds Alliance. Under Ivanova's brilliant leadership, the human fleet began to turn the tide, their advanced weapons and tactics taking a terrible toll on the enemy. And as the Council's losses mounted, as their ships began to fall in ever greater numbers, a sense of panic and despair began to spread through their ranks. On the surface of a dozen key worlds, human special forces teams launched daring raids against Council installations, sabotaging supply lines and communications hubs. The confusion and chaos that followed only added to the growing sense of doom that gripped the Council's forces. And then, in a final, desperate gamble, a team of human operatives managed to infiltrate the Council's emergency summit, a gathering of the regime's most powerful leaders on a secret, heavily defended world. In a lightning raid, the humans captured the Supreme Overlord and his inner circle, dealing a devastating blow to the Council's leadership. With their rulers in chains and their fleets in disarray, the Galactic Council began to collapse like a house of cards. Across the galaxy, the subjugated races rose up as one, throwing off the yoke of their oppressors and declaring their allegiance to the Free Worlds Alliance. And as the dust of battle settled, as the last of the Council's ships flowed into the depths of space, the true scope of the victory became clear. The tyranny of the Council, which had seemed so unassailable, so eternal, had been shattered beyond repair. A new era had dawned, one in which the races of the galaxy would at last be free to chart their own course, to live in peace and justice. For Admiral Ivanova and her brave soldiers, for the heroes of the Free Worlds Alliance, the battle had been won. But the hard work of building a new galactic order, of forging a lasting peace and prosperity for all, was only just beginning. In the weeks and months that followed, the leaders of the free worlds gathered on Earth to lay the foundations of this new order. With the wisdom and guidance of the humans, who had proven themselves to be the most steadfast defenders of freedom and justice, a new galactic federation began to take shape, one founded on the principles of equality, cooperation, and mutual respect. And as this new alliance began to flourish, as the wounds of war began to heal, and the peoples of the galaxy began to rebuild, the name of Earth and its valiant defenders became legend. For generations to come, the story of the small, unassuming world that had defied the mightiest empire in the cosmos and emerged victorious would be told and retold, a shining beacon of hope and inspiration for all who yearned for a better tomorrow. For in the end, it had been the indomitable spirit of humanity, the unwavering courage and determination of a single world, that had changed the course of galactic history. And as the stars themselves bore witness, a new age of peace and freedom dawned, a testament to the power of unity, sacrifice, and the unbreakable will of those who dared to stand against the darkness. The Galactic Council had fallen, and in its place, a new order had arisen, one that would guide the races of the galaxy into a brighter, more hopeful future. And at the center of it all, a shining beacon of leadership and strength, stood the heroes of Earth, the brave men and women who had risked everything to forge a better tomorrow for all.